Hey, it's Justin Spears here with Michael Lev, and we are here at Arizona Stadium. Normally, we're on the field, Michael Lev, but as you could probably see right behind here, or more towards that way, there's a lot of campers. Once a year, after every Arizona home football game, a bunch of kids come out, they camp on the field, they stay overnight here at the stadium. So we're doing our post-game video up here in the stands. Now, with that being said, Lev,
yes.
Arizona loses to Washington 51-27. We both thought that Washington would win tonight.
We did.
However, I thought it would be a much better game.
More competitive,
It was competitive
for a while,
up until really, later in the third quarter and entering the fourth quarter. Arizona, they entered, this game only outscoring their opponents 29-3 in the last three games. They gave
up in the
fourth quarter. They gave up 17 points in the fourth quarter tonight. Washington with a big win, 51-27 here. How do you assess the situation with the Wildcats right now? Because now they're 4-2 on the season. They're 2-1 in Pac-12 play, and there's kind of this jumble in the Pac-12 South. And you kind of feel like this was a game that Arizona had. They were up at halftime, Lev, and if they were to win this game, they'd have their fifth win of the season, entering the toughest part of their schedule. How do you assess what happened tonight?
Yeah, well, as Kevin Sumlin put it afterward, it was almost a miracle that they were up at the half because they had made so many mistakes in the first half.
Yeah.
Fumbles, muffed a punt, had a punt blocked, a lot of things that they did wrong, setting up Washington in Arizona territory. The defense came up big time and again to keep them in the game. The offense struggled early, kind of got things rolling a little bit late in the half, take the lead into halftime. Then things just totally turned around in the second half. The defense couldn't get any stops. I felt like Washington found a good groove running the ball, especially with McGrew doing most of the work instead of Ahmed. And then they took shots downfield, and they exposed some weaknesses in the Arizona secondary, isolating some receivers one-on-one, taking advantage of Jacob Eason's big arm. I think they scored on 6 of 7 second half possessions.
Yeah.
I'm not including the last possession, where they're just kneeling and running out the clock. I think 5 of those were touchdowns. That's a problem. The offense could never really get going. We'll talk about this here as we go on here in our post-game report. But Khalil Tate really struggled tonight.
Big time.
The pressure affected him, I think, psychologically as well as physically. Like, they got to him early, and it really seemed to throw him off. He described it as sort of a chaotic feeling. That was the word he used. It looked it, too.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't handle the pressure well. He was bailing out of the pocket. And Washington did a really good job of containing him. They didn't let him get to the outside. But we saw so many times last year where he would bail on a play, and he'd be able to buy time. Receivers would run down the field. He'd throw it. They had guys in his face. They really did an excellent job of also shutting down the perimeter game. The bubble screens just totally didn't work, and they made a lot of hay with those against Colorado. So overall, I saw struggles in all 3 phases tonight, and I thought, regardless of what the score was at halftime, that Washington was clearly the better team.
Yeah, and Khalil Tate said that this game was a reality check for Arizona, and going into this game, we all thought that this would be a good measurement to see where the Wildcats are at. They had 2 wins against Colorado and UCLA, but both of those teams are at the bottom of the Pac-12 South right now. So what do you take away from those wins? Tonight was a real measuring stick for the Wildcats, and things really collapsed in the second half. Going back to what you said about Khalil Tate, that's what I noticed too about the linebackers and the edge rushers. They kind of boxed him in, and you saw a lot of times Khalil Tate just constantly going backwards, and a couple times they even got to him where he would get sacked for like minus 16 yards.
And then he made an absolutely inexplicable mistake down at that end of the field. He was about to be sacked and tried to throw the ball away with his left hand, well behind the line of scrimmage. I don't know how he possibly could have hoped to get the ball to the line of scrimmage, which was the only way that he maybe could have gotten away with it, not being intentional grounding.
Yeah.
I mean, in that situation, you have to just curl up, hit the turf, take the loss, punt the football. That was a bad decision on his part. And I thought, the term that analysts sometimes use about this is like, I felt like he was seeing ghosts. Like even when the pressure wasn't there that strongly, like
gun-shy.
he felt it, and he wasn't going through his progressions. He wasn't stepping up in the pocket. It was a rough outing for him, coming on the heels of probably his best passing performance as a Wildcat.
Oh, for sure.
From the previous week. Washington was extremely disciplined. They brought a lot of blitzes, which
safety
teams are starting to blitz Khalil Tate, which they didn't do last week. And I thought it was pretty interesting during the press conference when I asked Kevin Sumlin if Khalil Tate was 100% healthy. And what did he say? I don't know. I don't know if that speaks to a lack of communication between the two of them, or if he just can't make that determination based on what he's seeing in practice or in the games. They certainly didn't try to run Khalil very much. You think maybe they try to slow down that pass rush with zone read keeper or a quarterback draw or something of that nature. We didn't see any of those things really. Only a handful of rushing plays. I think Khalil finished with minus 28 net rushing yards because the sacks count against your rushing total. It's kind of interesting too. Late in the game, they brought in Grant Gunnell, his third appearance of the season. Now he's inching up toward that that figure of 4.
I was going to say, can I step in and say something?
Plateau,
I was scratching my head at that, and I don't understand, and I'm kicking myself for not asking Kevin Sumlin.
Well, that's what Monday's press conference is for, right?
So.
Yeah.
But it's at a point in the game. You put Grant Gunnell in because the game's already out of hand. You already know you're going to lose. Why are you risking wasting a whole year of having Grant Gunnell? Because that's 3 games. Let's just say Khalil Tate, you asked Kevin Sumlin, is he healthy? Kevin Sumlin said, I don't know. What if you need Grant Gunnell for USC? You're going into the back half of the season. That's 6 more games. Anything can really happen. And if you're going to use Grant Gunnell, why not keep him for in case of emergency situations, not at the end of a game when it's already out of hand, because then you're just wasting a guy's eligibility.
Yeah, no, I think I completely agree with you. It made sense to put him in that NAU game just to get his feet wet, and I think that helped him when they played against UCLA a couple weeks later. He had already played in a game, so he didn't have all those first game jitters and all those things. This game, with what the score was and so forth, they could have put Red Rodriguez in. Yeah. They could have put Kevin Doyle in. They could have put Luke Ashworth in, whatever. Definitely a surprising decision, and one that we'll talk to Kevin Sumlin about on Monday.
Running back situation, real quick, before we talk a little bit about the defense. J.J. Taylor came back. Well, he played against Colorado, but he was very limited. He got the start tonight, was very effective on the ground.
He looked great.
For the Arizona. I thought he looked fantastic. Yeah. But Gary Brightwell out, Bam Smith out. So we saw a lot of J.J. Taylor. We saw a lot of Nathan Tilford. We saw a lot of Michael Wiley. Did those 2 guys being out really affect Arizona in any way?
I don't think so. Yeah. I don't think so. J.J. is a great player. He was an All-American last season. He looked like the J.J. of last year, I thought. You saw the spin moves. A great run.
He was running over guys.
A great run that was called back because of penalty. And I don't think that if Thomas Reed had let the guy go that he would have gotten to J.J. It was one of those, where he puts his foot in the ground and goes one way. It's kind of the football version of the crossover. Yeah. Kind of put the guy on skates, the ankle breaker. He looked good. The running backs were fine. I'll have to watch the game over again to see how they did, in terms of blitz pickup. The offensive line, though, I think by far their worst game. Yeah. Especially in pass protection. Yeah. They really struggled. There was an injury, I think. Robert Conjal didn't play at the left guard position. They moved Peyton Fears over there for most of the first half. He had been the starting right tackle. And then in the second half, it seemed like Bryson Kane played there for the most part. Edgar Barola had a rough time, I thought, at right tackle. I don't know. It would have made a little bit more sense to me, just for continuity's sake, to leave that right tackle situation as it was and just start Bryson Kane, who started, the first 10 games or so of last year. It's not like he's a freshman or whatever.
And what's up with Josh Donovan, too?
Yeah,
remember, we all thought that he was going to be a key contributor.
Yeah, he fell down the depth chart as training camp went on. He's running with the threes, you would say. Yeah. You mentioned the defense. Real quick, 134 yards for Washington in the first half, 316 in the second. Weird stat from this game: Washington was only 3 of 13 on third downs. And I think a lot of those probably happened in the first half, but they scored so easily in the second half. I don't think they faced many third downs. Yeah. It was just a collapse. Colin Schooler, I don't know what happened to him. He was pretty present early in the game, and they must have gotten bodies on him because I didn't notice him very much later in the game. And kind of interesting too is they used that 4-man front a lot in this game and didn't go to the 3 linebacker look that had been working so well for them. So I don't know what Kevin Sumlin's going to have to say about that if we are able to talk to him about it on Monday. Because his whole thing is have your best players on the field. And Anthony Pandy wasn't out there a lot.
Yeah.
Or he certainly wasn't out there a lot with Colin Schooler and Tony Fields.
So where do the Wildcats go from here? You know, they're 4-2 on the season.
Yeah.
They got, you know, a game at the Coliseum against USC. You got a game in Palo Alto against the Stanford Cardinal. Then you got Oregon State, Oregon, ASU, Utah, right here in Tucson. This is a tough stretch. This is a tough stretch for the Arizona Wildcats. Where do they go from here?
Here's what I think. I think they need to win one of the next 2 games. They need to split this road trip. And if you do that, you're 5-3 coming back home for homecoming. They're going to be wearing Desert Storm era throwback uniforms for Oregon State, which lost, I think, 59-7 today against Utah. I mean, that's a game you should win.
Yeah.
So if you're 5-3 heading into that game and you can beat Oregon State, you're bowl eligible. You know, and whatever happens after that happens after that.
Yeah.
So I think they gotta.
Well, because if you're Arizona, you don't want to go into that ASU game where you have to win in order to be bowl eligible.
Right. Which was the situation that they had last year. And I think Stanford is more vulnerable of the 2 opponents coming up, even though they beat this Washington team last week. You know, USC played pretty well against Notre Dame. They're going to be extremely motivated coming off a loss. I think they're going to be playing for Clay Helton's job, frankly. That's always a tough matchup for Arizona because of all the athletes that USC has. They have a really good defensive line too, and we saw what a good defensive line could do to this offensive line tonight. So they got to regroup. They got to figure out a way to win one of those next 2 games.
Let's see what happens. The Arizona Wildcats, they got USC next weekend. They fall to the Washington Huskies.
Coming to LA?
I am going to LA.
Awesome. All right. So the
LA
video is going to be a professional production next week, guys.
It's going to be a good one out there in LA. Arizona falling to Washington 51-27 right here at Arizona Stadium. That's Michael Lev. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at Michael J. Lev and catch all of his content on the Arizona Wildcats on Tucson.com and the Wildcaster app. For Lev, I'm Justin. Thanks for watching.